Hi there, eighth graders. Today we are going to finish up our social issues mini lessons and talk about how we can identify with characters that may be less likable or even just less likable characteristics. So we're going to look at a different poem today, super short. Focus on any part that you connect with or see yourself in. So it's called In the Line at the Drugstore. In line at the drugstore, it's finally your turn, and then it's not as he walks in front of you and puts his things on the counter. The cashier says, "Sir, she was next." When he turns to you, he is truly surprised. "Oh my God, I didn't see you. You must be in a hurry," you offer. "No, no, no, I really didn't see you." So there's some places you can see yourself. It's easier to identify with the standing up for her and saying, "Sir, she was next." But you can also see yourself in the maybe you've ever been in a spot where, you are something's going on and you're in a hurry and you don't necessarily see what's going on around you. Sometimes we're in the zone and we don't pay attention to other people or what's going on. I feel like that's happened to all of us, so we can all identify with that moment. And then just looking at maybe she was irritated. Have you ever been irritated with people that don't necessarily know what's going on? So there's a lot of different things that you can personally connect to, right? So it's not uncommon to see ourselves in the good guys. Like we look at the good traits that characters have, and then we're like, oh, that's us, right? Sometimes though, we need to look at the not so positive characters, right? Not many of us try to connect with the characters that aren't positive, but we all know that we're not perfect, right? So here's the teaching point. As a reader, there's a lot you miss if you identify with only the likable and admirable characters, the heroes. Not necessarily, superheroes, but the hero. You also need to be able to see yourself in the villain or see those bad qualities in yourself, because otherwise you ignore some of the story's power to change you. If you don't acknowledge the parts of you that may need changed, you ignore the power to do that. Okay. So looking at Catherine Patterson, she wrote Bridge to Terabithia. That's her most well-known story, and I think a lot of you have read that with different classes and things like that. She also wrote The Great Gilly Hopkins. She talks about the idea to love and see yourself in all characters, even in the bully or the villain or the antagonist. And so a lot of times she writes her villains based on people who like tease her, but then she kind of realized that it's necessary to identify with the villain, because if you connect with your characters, otherwise it's like a cardboard cutout. We don't necessarily get to know who the characters are, and we don't get to know ourselves. So thinking back to Francisco's story, Inside Out, we kind of look more at Francisco where we ever feel like left out, and we kind of identify with that. But if you look at Curtis, especially at his worst, if we put ourselves in his shoes, we can kind of learn, like, especially at the end, how Curtis was changed. Well, have we ever felt like we were getting wronged or things like that? Like what could we identify with Curtis? So it's important to look at those parts and characters that maybe we don't want to admit that's what we're like, but we all have those not so admirable qualities, right? So one way to really let a story change you is to allow yourself not to identify with the good guy, but to connect with the bad guy as well, even when they do things that we don't like. Well, that's fun. Very random. It allows us to see ourselves from a new perspective, right? And let me just go ahead and sign right back in here. I don't know what is going on. Sorry about this. I feel like I probably should have paused the video, but this is Mrs. Kane rolling with it. That's how I do things, right? Just roll with it. Just going to keep rolling. We're going to scroll down a little bit. There we go. Looking at a bad guy, right? So seeing ourselves like what's a flaw that we might have. It allows ourselves to see ourselves from a new perspective, and we convince us that like maybe there are things that I need to change about myself. I mean, my goodness, we all have traits that we don't like about ourselves, and we have traits that we know don't make us the best that we can be. And so identifying with how a bad guy or identifying with how a character goes through those things, I think that really can make a difference for us and making us better people, right? And that's the whole goal of these books, the whole goal of life is how do we make ourselves the best we can be, right? So we have this here chart, and we have kind of worked on this, especially as we've been going through the poem, is just looking at how to connect with our books, bringing life, bringing your life into reading, and bringing reading into your life, and how we can learn. And so that this is what today. So we've been working on connections, working on making connections, and how talking about those connections can help us understand other people and help us understand um, uh, uh, ourselves, but then looking to, like, don't just connect with the main character. Don't just connect with the good guy. Connect with this trait of this person, or connect with this is what this person's going through. And I think knowing that, and we are willing to change those not so awesome traits about ourselves, I think is what the whole point is making sure that we are willing to adjust, right? So think about the previous connections that you made. And then now pushing yourself to see the villain, I feel like is really going to make a big difference. And okay, so maybe next time I'm at the store and I ignore people, okay, how do I make that better? Or if I'm somebody who walks with my head down all the time because I don't want to, I know personally, like, a little smile goes a long way, right? So, what your goal is for the day, if you're not here, you'll have to do this on your own. But what you're going to do is you're going to look at a section of your book of your social issues book, and you're going to reread it. Now, it could be a big section, it could be a small section. It just a kind of a major scene would be important. And then look at like a line or a section that you really connect with, and then write those in your notes, and maybe it, like, look specifically at a character who may be the villain. Look specifically at a character who may have made a not so great choice. How can you connect with that, and what can you learn from that? And I think that's important. Okay. And then what we're going to do when we are done is we have a book review that is on Schoology. Okay. And it is in the social issues folder, in the reading folder. It's worth 10 mastery points, and it's 3 paragraphs. Make sure that you follow the directions. The first paragraph has its own directions. The second one has its own. The third one has its own. And then we have a sample there for you that we did with Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, just to give you some guidelines. And then there's space for you to type your own. Okay, now this isn't due until Friday, so you have some time. But just make sure that you do your best, because we want to make sure that you read the book. We want to make sure that you're learning from the book, and want to make sure that you are identifying with the characters and what you can learn from, and how to adjust yourself. Okay. As always, email me with any questions, and have a great day.